cares? The same thing once happened to me.
Well, no one did ask you, did they?
Foresight! Stupid runt!
Shame on thee, you scalded grinks.
Heretic!
Wicked bastard!
Yes, Neville.
What is that? Whining sound? Ugly bleeder.
You friggin' idiot!
Stick it up your arse.
Sergeant Major, are you seeing this piece of shit? Not quite how I'd have put it, sir.
If you are lucky enough to be dumped into a match where Hadron has hacked Vox communications, you'll hear the traitorous Mobian sick losing their minds in confusion as Space Marine worthy threats fall to a team of half-naked knife-wielding maniacs.
There are only 4 of them. 4!
No, we are not members of the Assassinorum, just 4 guys and gals, driven by the ever-present threat of death and a slightly miffed Sergeant Major. It's one of the community's favourite dynamics in the game. Finally, acknowledgement from our very enemies that the feats of the rejects are as absurd as they sound.
How the fuck did you do that? That's bullshit.
Wolver himself is only just starting to realise how little control he has over the war on Tertium, and he's understandably not too chuffed about it. After the latest addition to Tertium's map pool, where you get to watch a full health beast of Nurgle perish in 12 seconds flat, you kinda start to feel bad for the guy. His troops bear the full weight of this conflict on their shoulders, much like our rejects, although to my knowledge Morrow won't have us skinned for failing, nor are we liable to have our skulls caved in by a rock that has broken the sound barrier. Only the sane are left to suffer the grim reality of Tertium's rough and tumble, so it's a good thing for the Mobians that they are absolutely bonkers. Captain Wolver could benefit from a few episodes of Undercover Boss, because he's missing out on some seriously whimsical vibes. An army of lunatics that are having way too much fun. Not just the Mobians either, most of Darktide's enemies are living life to its fullest, like this dude, for instance, whose entire purpose is to throw fermented sever heads at people.
Thou art coward!
Of course, nobody on Tertium signs up for the Guard, knowing they'd be returning to their home sooner or later with the goal of helping a cult to fart bomb their old neighborhood. And the implications of the Mobians' declining mental state are more tragic the more you think about it. Perhaps that's why the writers decided to mix misery with the more comically inclined members of the Nurgle fan club. From the most recently infected groaner to the infamous captain of the Mobs, Darktide's enemies are worth some attention, even if their story is told through a guy who thinks playing this song will make for a good transition.
The worms in my head won't shut the hell up. They're telling me to go absolutely fucking stupid on them.
Imagine you just drank a sip of water. Yeah, it tasted a bit funny, but this is the torrent where everything tastes funny. By lunchtime, half your hair has fallen out, and the chances of you biting off your habmate's nose have gone
from shabby to chic.
Barry just came back after sifting through waste, and he's never looked more delicious in his life. As a reject, waddling up to the freshly infected souls who have yet to notice anything suspicious will net you a disturbing glimpse into the Pox. The budding chaos zombies of Darktide manage the usual grumbles, wails, and whatever sounds Austin Butler is trying to make in June 2. At this point in the infection, they are too far gone, suffering Nurgle's diseases without the fun parts like pain tolerance, your own personal human-sized mosquito to ride on, or expertise in World of Warcraft. The most you can do for them is deliver the Emperor's mercy, or at least a funny death. Groaners are a grim reminder that Nurgle isn't messing around. Zombies aren't known to be a particularly cheery topic in the stories they appear in, and the VAs did a fantastic job portraying the descent into madness everyone goes through after having a stuffed nose for a few days. IMDb credits 12 different voice actors for their performances as Groaner specifically. As far as I can tell, there are only 4 voices in game. Where are the rest, Fat Shark? Anyway, if you want to experience chills and you have 20 minutes of free time, I suggest listening to the Groaner voice lines video Hypnotic has on YouTube. Stick it on while you're doing the dishes or working out or something, like the sane person that you are. The next stage of the walking pox is to become an actual poxwalker. Reduced to a few compelling instincts, they'll shamble towards you in great hordes, hoping for a mouthful of unprocessed corpse starch ingredients. Despite featuring similar visual world building to the Groaners, Poxwalkers have lost any remaining sense of self. There are no pleas for mercy as you approach, only more of this. When the game isn't busy sending 500 rages your way, Poxwalkers and Groaners will be the ones making up the bulk of the horde, the vast majority of them being victims of Nurgle, not perpetrators. I mention this because the Inquisition strike teams currently face 2 factions, the Cult of Admonition, otherwise known as the Dregs, and the Mobian 6th Traitor Guard, otherwise known as the Scabs. The Mobian 6th, led by Captain Wolver, are victims too, in their own way, although herding giant face-melting slugs to kill the rejects makes it harder to pity them. Deployed on a world of pure unfettered nastiness by order of the Lord Mobian, the 6th were left with no choice but to die horribly or embrace the unwashed pits of Nox Alpha.
Somebody Stick it, I dare you.
With most of them dead or converted, Wolver and co. made their way back to Atoma to enact brutal justice on the Imperium by killing millions of innocent poor people. As the power dynamic between the two enemy factions is shifting in favour of the cult, we're going to be getting a lot more Nurgle than our warband knows what to do with. And of all the foul creatures Nurgle could send our way, the most dangerous among them is the barely blessed trash mob shooter. Crouched behind every box is a regular human armed with a rifle designed to poke holes in Ogren hide. A bruiser wearing sound-muffling shoes who has prepared his whole life to one-shot Zeta-level psychers. The Scab and Dreg infantry are commonly sprawled throughout the map, and although we deal with them about as easily as a Primaris Space Marine, getting caught out can result in a quick and embarrassing down. Even on these smaller models, you can start to see the differences separating the two factions, distinct visual details that remain consistent throughout the enemy lineup. Cultists love their boils, rune tattoos, and wear little to no armor, whereas the Mobians are covered head to toe in flak or carapace, missing noses, lips, and have faces wrought with scars more reminiscent of torture than blessings of any kind. If you feel like embarrassing yourself, try talking without using your lips and you'll realize that half these folks being able to vocalize anything at all is a miracle of its own. The shooters in particular have voice lines for a surprising amount of situations, like when you aren't pushing or when your character is low on ammo.
Ammo's dry. Now kill them.
Usually said from a distance without the elite special reverb, it's a little harder to catch these numerous lines until you close the distance and hear the most on-point "Zealot has just given me brain damage" sound imaginable. The gunner elites are in many ways an upgrade from these small infantry troops, firing oppressive volleys of bullets, lasfire, and probably a few swear words in dark tongue.
Tasfag, Nurgle.
Fat Shark's writers have diligently Frankensteined together a Nurgly language, spoken only by the cultists alongside High Gothic. Delivering bombastic larger-than-life lines are the elite unit's best feature, and of course they need to be doing this an awful lot if Fat Shark want us to shoot them during lights out missions.
Got a present for you.
While hard to hear amongst the chaos, you can tell the VAs emulated the recoil of the autoguns by deliberately shaking their voices. Well, it's either that or they gave Mike Geary a real machine gun in the booth. I find it interesting that the shotgunners have alert lines saying stuff like, "Get out of here," as if any of these cultists will want to talk it out.
Leave or die! Do not approach!
Also relatively considerate is the Dreg gunner, who will ask his co-workers not to run in front of their giant machine gun. And I hear you asking, are any of these villains filled with such compassion to the point that they actively avoid shooting their allies? Nothing is stealthier than a pair of LED goggles and an ominous red laser sight, an unforeseen flaw that the Dregs have managed to avoid by having no formally trained military sharpshooters. The Mobian sniper is all alone in that regard. Well, in fact, the Mobian sniper is always alone. Despite being a killer shot with a killer smile, everyone avoids him like a bar of soap. Get close to the silly little guy, and he'll initiate an ancient family tradition passed down for 40,000 years. You don't get any Lasman tougher than the Mobian 6th, after all. The ending quote from Dan Abnett's Mobian 6th lore dump. I'd say given that the only voice lines the sniper can muster are dying whimpers,
That was a fucking lie.
in a universe that has so many brutal ranged weapons, sending drugged up dudes with axes to fight your battles sounds like a terrible idea. As it turns out, it works quite well, and you don't need to be sane or really hate aliens for it to work. When you see a herd of melee elites migrating to the veteran, you'll hear a non-stop stream of happy blokes who love their job.
Your death will be sweet, but not for you. Let me through.
Dreg Ragers might look like a cult experiment gone wrong, but they can tank just as much damage as the Mobian armored version, unless Fat Shark inexplicably decide one day to give the Scabs a carapace torso. This form is the beginning of a Dreg's life to cult-wide stardom, though the larger the stim canister implants get seems to correlate with an inability to articulate anything meaningful.
I smell your blasphemy.
It's quite pungent. Oh yeah.
With 3 types of Ogren, almost mirroring the loyalist talent tree archetypes, we've got to wrestle with the reality that the big fellas can be corrupted by chaos. Luckily, most of them seem to have retained their goofy nature.
Wrecking crew!
Ragers, Maulers, and the Chaos Ogrens have plenty of detail, although personality-wise, they're mostly just crackheads who have killed a ton of people, so I don't think I'll be pulling any deep lore out of my ass. They go hard, and that's all they need to do.
I see him.
The Poxburster is a Poxwalker strapped with explosives.
That's all I come to say.
When looking at Tabletop, you can see where their inspiration for many a Darktide design has come from. Yep, that's a legally distinct beast of Nurgle, and that for sure looks like a bunch of Poxwalkers. Then you have the Poxhound, which is just a 1-to-1 Forge World Chaos Hound painted green. With the loyalist enforcers who train these hounds long gone, they've been left to prowl the sub-levels alone or in packs, pouncing great distances towards the rejects with varying degrees of success. As one of the disablers, Pox hounds represent part of a truly fearful trio fighting for the archenemy. The second has been called many names, mostly out of rage. Ladies and gentlemen, the Trapper.
Something new for the collection.
I'm starting to think that the Mobians didn't take this whole war business very seriously. Sorry, Captain Wolver, we've run out of giant electrified nets. Time to go home. As for the reason why one of the Mobians thinks it's a good idea to run at us with a webgun, I have no idea. Maybe they purposefully trained her wrong as a joke that has become the end of many missions. Thankfully, it's not too hard to keep track of where she is because of all the racket she makes.
I'll sell you down.
Featuring the sacred mark of Nurgle on her mask, which are these 3 circles you see everywhere, there's no doubt that the plans the Trapper has for those caught in the net are of depraved origin, much to the horror of many.
I know what you're wondering. What's in the cast?
The cult also has a tendency to go a bit too far. I suppose it's the nature of chaos to inject your fellow mortals with a suspicious green substance. If the theory about the Rage's Pokemon-like evolution is to be believed, then the Dregs have done a fantastic job at creating the creature known as the Mutant. At first glance, the Mutie has one offensive tactic: run at a guy and hope they used all their dodges fighting Poxwalkers. The sheer size and strength of the Mutant is a red herring, as he's the only disabler who follows Marvel's supervillain grab rules, meaning the Mutie's most lethal action is to simply use their ear-shattering metal singer voice. Though there is next to nothing mysterious about a bloke juiced to the gills with Ermal's special sauce, one can only wonder why he'd want to become this tiny-headed abomination. Then again, I doubt the transformation was voluntary, which would explain the constant screaming.
Fire, death, renewal. Fire, death, renewal. Fire, death, renewal.
Who the fuck starts a conversation like that? I just sat down.
Think of all the annoying sounds your neighbor can make. Now, imagine your neighbor is the voice actor for the Scab Flamer. Do you really want to confront a guy who sounds like this for a mere noise complaint?
Want him crispy?
And the Dreg Tox Flamer is a cut above, believing her putrid green flame necessary to spread the majesty of Nurgle's truth.
The flame take you!
Slinging ignited promethium of varying degrees, I'm sure if they stopped trying to burn everything to a crisp, they'd have a lot to talk about. After all, they both have at least one thing in common. There's not a single brain cell shared between the two of them.
God's lessons are so beautiful. God's lessons are beautiful.
Continuing the trend of specials who are having the time of their life, the bombers throw bombs of conventional and unconventional quality. Collecting heads and performing the sacred rites to transform them into fully functional blight grenades is a full-time gig. Those drabs don't come off at the end of the day, neither do the heads get stored in the fridge overnight while the Dreg bomber sleeps.
Kill me later.
Whereas the others get enough voice lines to fit into a 2-minute length video on average, Green Gas Man gets 5 minutes of uninterrupted preaching. And you can bet it's filled with the yet-to-be-decoded Darktide Dark Tongue.
Say the line, Bart.
Mutas Varg! Nurgle!
The Mobian bomber has a different approach to warfare, the far more reasonable method of lobbing incendiary nades in every direction. During the campaign on Nox Alpha, it was vital to keep a cheery morale, hence the class clown Mobian bomber's close relationship with banger one-liners.
Someone call for a boom!
Neglect is dangerous. You stop playing Havoc for 1 week and all of a sudden your reputation with the Stillheads is in the gutter. Duquesne might as well personally be the one to spit in your face as you stroll up to the Mobian 53rd mission terminal, though it could be far worse. We can thank our lucky stars that after a week of ignoring her, she doesn't retreat into a swamp and pupate into an angry demonic fly. That's the Beast of Nurgle's job, a creature whose entire psyche can be summed up by watching Meet the Pyro. The beast begins its life cycle with optimism, as do many Darktide players before using the party finder. However, being in proximity to the rejects can prove to be a thoroughly disappointing, if not deadly experience for the lesser demon. As you might know, beasts of Nurgle can transform into rotflies, provided that their last few trips to the material plane went badly enough. I guess being stabbed to death by these folks isn't enough to radicalize the poor things, or maybe the cult is just bad at summoning warp horrors. Seeing these in middle sections of the hive should be shooting warning signals into Rannick's brain at 500 miles per hour. But for now, he's too busy figuring out if there is even a Nurgle cult uprising on Atoma.
So the cult named themselves Admonition.
What took you so long, idiot?
I suppose I can forgive him considering that we always arrive back on the Morningstar squeaky clean. No signs of being swallowed by any plague demons at all. Not all monstrosities we face are direct creations of Nurgle. Some are cultivated with a little team effort. Whether this is because Nurgle is too dumb to realize that juicing up Ogrins with blessings is a good idea or not doesn't matter. The point is that a monster like the Plague Ogrin is crafted deliberately by Plague worshippers, making them a niche enemy type among Nurgle forces. Providing its soul isn't trapped and it's not being forced to watch its own zombified corpse toddle around, becoming a behemoth of this size can't be a bad deal for the Ogrins, who never shower anyway and pride themselves in their strength and size. Plus they get little boots, which is more than can be said for some of the rejects. Chaos spawns are supposed to be unique down to the individual. It's not the case in Darktide because they aren't trying to kill their design team. What looks like a triumph of plague engineering is actually a miserable failure in terms of creating something that can understand basic orders.
Go. Kill some varlets.
This isn't a final glorious evolution, more so the inevitable result of pumping a regular dude full of stims and magic diseases. As Morrow would put it, an oopsie.
Not quite how I'd have put it.
Right, I'm sorry.
I mean, it doesn't take a genius to tell that something went wrong here. Still, a Chaos Spawn is still a bloody horrifying creature that nobody in their right mind would want to fight. At least the Inquisition can sleep soundly knowing Nurgle is pulling the rug under aspiring cult champions. Unfortunately, the cult has better ways of binding the warp to the willing and unwilling folks of Tertium. While it makes for a great prank to play on humans, mucking around in real space is a lot of effort for most demons. Learned members of the Admonition know this, damning a mortal soul to eternal torment just for a chance to have a demon pet. A demon that has been summoned and bound to a host doesn't suffer the whole enduring the wrong side of reality problem. It's an incredibly powerful ally, if it's on your side and hasn't been discarded in a random alley where anyone could walk up and poke it with a big stick. For a moment, let's ignore the fact that some cheeky blighter is wandering the hive dropping demons in questionable places. Through fragmented prayer, Darktide's demon host in question does her best to stay sane, although it's probably a bit late for that. Even as the demon speaks through her, unshackled, there's still some defiance left. Having a boss that wipes the floor with the rejects wouldn't make for tantalizing gameplay, nor does it make much sense to have multiple Nurgle-aligned demon princes littering Tertium's vivid architecture. They feel more like a throwaway experiment made by a very bored cult leader who spends their time stealing the souls of inquisitorial agents, binding them to demons a few rungs lower on the food chain than what you usually come to expect. The result? A few sloppy, unstable demon hosts of lesser strength.
There is just news. There is no good or bad.
Hopefully this will change soon, and this dumb video will be outdated as more chaos enemies emerge. I can think of some reject personalities that could use the excitement. Excluding the creatures that have to be convinced, someone has to lead the masses of Mobians and cultists alike. Officially, Captain Wolver orders the 6th around, while the main cult leaders remain a mysterious trio yet to be revealed. However, there's a ton of peeps to look out for, and it's not like Wolver is managing an entire regiment alone, even if his latest blood pressure test says otherwise. Scab captains are another tally on the monstrosity lineup. Cool enough to have voice lines and a banger soundtrack, but not important to the story in any way. Between the reused Chaos Spawn assets and certain captain voice variants, Fatshark have designed the perfect environment to confuse Vermintide players.
There is life in darkness. Let me show you.
I shall purge thee all in Sigmar's name!
Perhaps in another life, these fellas would make great antagonists. They're well equipped, hold titles of their own, and have been generously granted randomly generated names. After the Rolling Steel update, we got our first look at the cult version of this boss, the Cult Champion. Functionally, they're exactly the same, with voice lines befitting a devout lunatic who has risen the ranks in the Admonition.
Your death is close enough to taste.
So, where is our favourite captain? Why hasn't he shown his ugly mug for the last 2 years? Well, this is what happened the first time he got too close to the Inquisition, and you can guess what will happen if he tries again. Wolver and his 2 former lieutenants have been the highlight of the story until now, and whatever wacky reveals Fatshark has in store for us in the future will be better suited to a different video. At least I'd feel better talking about them when I don't have to speculate too much. Honestly, I was already having trouble trying to remain informative without devolving into jokes every sentence.
That's gonna do it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry that I forgot to make even one remotely interesting observation during the entire video.
Next vid is going to be about the Inquisition, and afterwards I'll see about covering baddies relevant to the overarching plot, starting with the twins. Or the twin.
I won't forget you, buddy.